All right. So today I have a kind of a little object lesson. So I thought this would be a good visual to broccoli. All right. So what we're looking at today is beef versus broccoli. And what we're specifically looking at is, well, we're going to look at a couple things, but one of the things I want to look at is protein. One of the things that many people find surprising is that there's quite a bit of protein in vegetables, especially when you compare calorie for calorie. And so we're going to be looking today at 100 grams of beef, or that's about 4 ounces of beef. And we're going to look at the protein content of 4 ounces of beef, and then we're going to compare it to the same number of calories from broccoli. And now, while the amino acids will be a little bit different in broccoli and beef, it's important to realize that, again, vegetables are not just high in fiber and antioxidants and things like that, but they're also a good source of protein. A good example of this, again, that many people never really stop to think about, is that many of the foods that people think of as protein foods that, you got to eat these foods to get your protein. So I grew up in a dairy farm, so, it was, meat and milk. We drank a lot of milk when we were kids because, one, they always said, well, milk's loaded with calcium and you want to have strong teeth and bones. Despite drinking milk like it was water, I had a cavity in pretty much every tooth by the time I was 18. It didn't protect me from cavities. It wasn't the magical elixir that they said, per se. Ate a lot of protein, a lot of meat, a lot of dairy products. But yet most of these foods come from animals that themselves don't eat any meat. So for example, you take beef and milk from cows. These animals don't eat any animal foods. They eat grass and weeds. So how the heck is their flesh loaded with protein and their milk loaded with calcium, and yet they don't eat these things? That's because, well, they do eat these things. They just eat them in a plant form. They eat these plants that are loaded with amino acids. The way protein works in the body is we don't just take protein from, let's say, beef and just make it into human protein. Your body has specific requirements for individual amino acids, and when you eat a food, it just literally goes in and says, well, I need that one, but I don't need that one. And so I have to excrete the one I don't need, and I'm going to keep the ones I do need. And so your body is just amazing at extracting from the foods that it consumes the specific amino acids that it needs, and then it combines them together to make human flesh. So you might get 3 or 4 amino acids from a carrot. You get another 2 or 3 from an apple. You get another 1 or 2 over here from eating some beans or whatever the case might be. But anytime you eat those foods, your body will just select out the amino acids that it needs and combine them together. After I did this lesson this morning, one of the girls in class said, she goes, is it true? She goes, I heard a friend told me that if you mix, like, say, broccoli and rice, you're going to get better protein than if you were to just eat one alone. And so I explained to her, I said, well, it's sort of true and it's sort of not true. What is true is that plants have varying ratios of amino acids, and sometimes when you mix one plant food with another, like say for example rice and beans or corn and beans, you get what are called these complementary proteins, where the amino acid profile is more similar to that what you find in meat, because meat is really high in specific amino acids. The only thing that's not true, however, is that scientists discovered a long time ago, in fact, back in the 70s, they used to have cookbooks that were specifically all about food combining, and the whole idea was, we'll give you all these recipes for all these plant proteins you can combine together and you'll get like this perfect protein. And so people thought they had to combine these things together to get all their amino acids. But later on, scientists discovered that that's not how the body works. You don't need to combine proteins in meals. Your body will simply extract from foods throughout the day what specific amino acids it needs. And, double whammy, whenever you consume too many non-essential proteins, which is often the case when you eat a lot of animal foods, your body has to excrete those proteins. They said, I don't need those. So what's the downside to this? Well, there's at least 2 reasons you want to be cautious with this. One is when you consume excess amino acids, you just decrease the amount of fat your body oxidizes at the expense of protein oxidation. So what that means is your body says, I'm just going to burn less fat today so I can take that energy and direct it toward getting rid of these excess amino acids that I don't need. On the other hand, another issue is excess, well, pretty much excess anything, but when we see excess amino acids are also linked to the consumption of excess amino acids, are also linked to certain types of cancer and aging processes, and that's because when you eat a lot of protein, you kick up hormone activity like mTOR, IGF-1, and so on, which are linked to the growth of certain cancers as well as aging. So in other words, you don't necessarily want to eat too much protein. Ideally, you'd eat just the right amount of protein. Now, when we look here, you can see that in 100 grams of beef, there's about 236 calories and about 30 grams of protein. Now that 30 grams of protein will vary depending on the cut of beef. So if it's a lean beef, or you see how your beef can be like 93% lean or 83%, whatever. So the calories and the protein will vary a little bit, but roughly about 30 grams of protein. Now in the same number of calories from broccoli, so 236 calories of broccoli, we get about 26 grams of protein. So you can see that the protein is actually quite similar. However, to use this little object lesson, we see another advantage to consuming a good amount of vegetables in your diet. And so I went ahead and I brought out my little scale here, and I found some units of weight that are similar density. So you can kind of see this foam block here, and these here. If I go ahead and I put this foam block on here, and one of these little cubes got about 100 grams. So this would represent, now you got to bear in mind that 100 grams of beef isn't going to look that big, right? It's going to be, 4 ounces, not that big, right? But that's because the foam is very light. But it's still going to serve for us to see when we use comparable weights and to get an idea. Let's imagine that these two blocks here are akin to 100 grams of beef volume-wise, right? And then let's compare it to the exact same number of calories from broccoli. So to get the same number of calories from broccoli, we need to have almost there. Whoop. If I can balance it here. All right. So that's the same number of calories volume-wise. We come out to, it's like 789 grams, 786 grams, something like that, of broccoli to get the same number of calories as 4 ounces of beef. So, the point of this isn't to say, oh, you got to go out and eat 700. I mean, no one's going to eat that much broccoli, right? And now, obviously, again, it was not going to be quite that much, but comparatively speaking, they're very comparable as far as the differences in volume. Way more broccoli than you would beef. Now, so the point of this is, like I said, is not to say don't eat beef. The point is to say small portion of protein along with a very large serving of vegetables. I mean, many people, I find, like when they turn in their nutrition sheets and they have a vegetable meal where they've tracked 7 calories. I mean, it's like 7 calories of vegetables. I mean, like you get like 30 calories from broccoli, and I think it's like 1 or 2 cups of broccoli. You got to have at least 1 or 2 cups, maybe 3 or 4 cups of vegetables with your meal to really get the volume that's going to help with feeling full throughout the day, and so you're not feeling hungry all day. And this is also why portion control fails for many people, because when you're eating very little, dinky portions throughout the day, you're not really going to feel very full as you go throughout the day, and subsequently you're going to just be, continue to snack and continue to want to eat other things. So we want to make sure we're having sufficient volume as we go through the day as well, so that we can, feel satisfied. So anyways, hope that little object lesson was helpful. You're welcome.